Before the crash, I remember wiping angry tears from my eyes, and then a deer jumping in front of my car. I swerved to avoid it, but hit a tree instead. I drifted between consciousness and unconsciousness, my eyes trying their hardest to open. I was pulled out of my car, which I then saw erupt into flames. I remember having a flashlight shone into my eyes to see if I had a concussion, but then I blacked out. But before I dive into the story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. We appreciate it. When I woke up, I was in a cold hospital room. A bunch of people crowded me, asking me a million questions and giving me a headache. But a woman stood up and made them all go away. She spoke softly to me. "How are you feeling, Samira?" she asked. I was confused. Was my name Samira? She noticed my confusion and pointed at my bracelet. It said Samira. After a few tests and enduring nasty hospital food, the lady took me home. They estimated my age at 15 years old, which I agreed seemed about right. The woman's name was Alice, and she took me home with her. On the way to her house, she said, "I couldn't stand the thought of them putting you in foster care or something." She seemed really nice. I spent months with Alice. She became like a mom to me, even though I couldn't remember if I ever had a mom. I couldn't remember anything before the crash. It was so annoying. It was all just a blur. Sometimes I'd wake up sweating in the middle of the night, thinking I saw someone I recognized in my dreams, but their face was blank. Alice took me shopping and enrolled me in high school. We got our nails done a bunch of times, and she dressed me up for when I went out with friends. Sometimes I'd zone out, be it at school or during dinner, and hear voices, like snippets of conversations. They drove me nuts. I would have given anything to make them shut up. Alice saw I was losing sleep over those things I heard and saw, so she suggested we take a trip. I was very excited. We packed our bags and got ready for our little road trip. We were gonna visit a big city. On the way there, we blasted music and ate loads of snacks. We even stopped by the side of the road and took pictures in the beautiful sunset. When we arrived in the city, it was nighttime. We dragged our suitcases to the nearest hotel and got a room there. We slept like babies all night, and we were up bright and early the next day. We were gonna go to a cafe down the street for breakfast, but as we walked, people gave me weird looks. Did I have something on my face? I tried to ignore them, but they were getting annoying. I saw one of them look at me and then at a lamppost, so I walked up to it, and what I saw shocked me. It was a missing poster with my face on it. I called Alice over and she was shocked too. Was I really missing from somewhere? Somewhere in this city? When we sat down to breakfast, we tried to puzzle things together. Could it be my family? My parents? We already thought it was weird that I got into a car and drove off at 15. So maybe I ran away from my parents. It seemed like the only logical thing. Alice asked me if I wanted to call the number on the poster, but I had a feeling I shouldn't go back to whatever my past situation was. We spent the day walking around the city and visiting museums. At night, we were very tired, so we just wanted to watch a movie in our room, but everything in the mini fridge was extremely overpriced. So I went to get snacks from a corner store while Alice took a bath. The air outside was chilly, but the bustling city was finally quiet. I walked a few blocks and reached the little store. "Hey, Samira," said the man behind the counter without taking his eyes off the little TV beside him. I replied, "Hey, Jerry," without thinking, but then paused. How did I know his name? Besides me, there was only one more customer in the store, a tall guy with his hood up. He creeped me out, so I got the snacks, paid, and bolted. I walked quickly, though not quickly enough for him to realize I was running away. I heard steps behind me, and his shadow became bigger and bigger as he caught up with me. My heart was beating out of my chest, so loud he could probably hear it too. I stiffened as he grabbed my shoulder and spun me around to face him. He had these deep blue eyes that pierced into mine, but they immediately started tearing up. Out of nowhere, he hugged me tight. "I missed you so much, it almost killed me," he said, but I pushed him off me and ran towards the hotel as fast as I could. I could hear him running after me and shouting my name, but I was faster. I was hyperventilating in the elevator when I entered our room. Alice was just drying her hair when she saw how upset I was. I sat on the bed and explained everything that happened to me, while she listened and carefully tried to comfort me as much as she could. The weird thing is that I felt like I knew him, I said. Like I had seen his eyes before. Alice told me that it was probably a good idea for her to go with me if I wanted something at night, because who knows who that man was and what his intentions were. I agreed, of course. We watched our movie and went to sleep, but I kept thinking about the man's eyes. I had a dream with him in it. We were sitting on a blanket in a park laughing. He looked very handsome, but he looked like he was in his 20s. But I was only 15, so that didn't make sense. The next morning, I decided to go get us breakfast alone, because I didn't want to be scared of being outside by myself. I walked towards the cafe, but then I saw the man again and froze. He had huge bags under his eyes, which I didn't notice the night before. He was hunched over and deflated, but when he saw me, he straightened his back. He saw that he startled me, so he held out his hands to show he was harmless. He approached me slowly. "You don't remember me, do you?" he asked. "Should I?" I asked back. He said, "I would hope so." He said he needed to talk to me, that it was urgent. I agreed, but under a few conditions. I would follow him to where he wanted to talk and keep my distance. If he did anything weird, I'd simply shout and run away. He chuckled and nodded. As we walked, he kept glancing back at me and smiling. He had a gorgeous smile. We ended up in a park, which I recognized as the park I dreamt of the night before. We sat down and everything felt familiar, from the grass under my palms to his company. "I've been going to that corner store every night since you disappeared," the guy began. "It's your favorite." I told him I was in a car crash and didn't remember anything, but that sometimes things felt familiar and I saw flashes of memories when I tried to sleep. And that's when he said it. "We're engaged." He blurted out like he had been holding it in forever. "What?" I demanded. He tried to crawl closer to me, but I flinched. So he stayed. He began explaining that we met in college and got engaged the night I disappeared. "That's impossible! You're in your 20s and I'm like 15!" I shouted at him. "You're literally 25!" he shouted back. He showed me a bunch of pictures on his phone of us. We did look like a couple. He then asked for my hand, which I reluctantly let him grab. He slid the simple ring I was wearing off my finger and took off his matching one. "Sorry, they're so simple. I'm just a college student," he said, blushing slightly, which kinda warmed my heart. He showed me that there was something written on the inside. His name on mine and my name on his, followed by a date. I gasped. Could it be true? I mean, I wouldn't mind. He was very handsome, but up until a few minutes ago, I thought I was 15. "Why did I disappear?" I asked him softly, imagining it was some sort of sensitive topic. "I asked you to marry me and left to get champagne to celebrate that you said yes. But we made the mistake of posting about it online. My ex showed up and you guys fought. I don't know what about. When I arrived, you were gone," he explained with tears in his eyes. I felt so bad for him and felt strong affection, so I gave him a hug and let him be sad for a while. I felt like he had been strong for too long. "I know you," I said. He looked up wide-eyed, thinking I remembered, but I didn't. All the snippets of conversations and memories took shape. They were him, moments of our life, but they were still scattered around. We headed back to the hotel to tell Alice the news. A few days later, Alice and I arrived at the guy's apartment. Or I guess my former fiancé's apartment. I still had the ring, but I felt like I didn't know him, so I couldn't possibly be engaged to him anymore. He understood, but I saw how it broke his heart. The place was full of people. They all claimed to be my friends and family and showed me dozens of pictures each, trying to jog my memory. But nothing. Even my parents were there. Turns out I didn't run away from them like Alice and I suspected, but we sure had a laugh about that. The guy, whose name I discovered was Luke, stayed away from me during the party. I could feel him looking at me, but he stayed away. He talked to everyone but me, and for some reason, that made me jealous. After a while of eating and talking to people, I was feeling very overwhelmed. I snuck out onto the balcony and then climbed the fire escape. I climbed all the way to the top of the building, where there was a stunning terrace full of plants. The sun was starting to set, so the sky looked beautiful. I stayed there a while, staring into nothingness, taking it all in. It was getting darker and colder. I started shivering, but then I felt someone put a jacket over my shoulders. I turned around to see Luke. He looked so much more refreshed than when I saw him the day he took me to the park. We gazed up at the stars together, and he started telling me about them. You don't remember the story I used to tell about constellations, do you? He asked me, and I shook my head. He started telling me a beautiful story about a man and a woman who were in love, but couldn't be together. She was locked far away from him, so he grew desperate and bargained with the stars. The stars felt ignored, and he needed to send messages to his loved one, so he told them to move and make shapes he saw in his mind. People noticed the beautiful shapes the stars were in, and the man's loved one saw the message he sent her. Luke was finishing the story, and in the last sentence, something clicked. All my memories came flooding back. I remembered meeting Luke, my first day of high school, the awful braces I had to wear when I was actually 15. I remembered everything. I kissed Luke, and then we ran downstairs. I was so happy that I finally remembered everyone in Luke's living room. Alice tried to sneak off, but we had become so close, and she helped me out so much that I just had to convince her to stay in my life. Alice agreed, and my parents were very fond of her too, which is why I had 3 people walking me down the aisle 3 months later, when I finally married Luke.